Indian Forest Service examination is conducted in three stages, and the primary stage being preliminary examination. Although the preliminary examination is common with the civil services examination, there are 2 points that I would want to make. The number of aspirants who wrote the prelims and the number of aspirants who wrote the mains for Indian Forest Service examination during the past 3 years, the ratio has been 1 is to 100. So the competition is intense at the preliminary stage. That is number one. The cutoff for the past 2-3 years has been hovering around 120. So that is 120 out of 200. Preliminary examination that consists of two papers, that is GS1 and GS2. So GS2 is basically aptitude paper and that is qualifying in nature. If one is able to secure 33% of marks, the candidate qualifies. GS1 paper that has 6 specific sections, and I would come to it. That is history, geography, economic and social development, general science, environment science, and polity. That is constitution and governance. For each of the parts, there is a specific strategy to prepare for the preliminary examination. For history, I refer to the three old NCERT books, that is for class 11th and 12th, each part covering the ancient, medieval, and the modern India. I also consulted a book on India's independence. It's about history. For geography, I went through the NCERT books from class 6 to 12, and I covered each book from class 6 to 12. In addition to that, I also had a atlas. One can consult any atlases. I consulted the atlas by Orient Black Swan, and whenever I came across any topic that was in news, I consulted the atlas. So there was extensive consultation. For polity, I went through the polity book on polity by Lakshmikant. There is also a book on governance by Lakshmikant. I went through the specific chapters. For general science, I went through the NCERT books of class 6 to 10. For environment, I consulted the book by ICSC for class 9 to 12. And there is a book for UGC. There is a book by UGC for undergraduate students on environment, that is by Eraj Baruch. So I consulted that book also. For economics, I did class 11th and 12th, micro and macroeconomics. In addition to that, I consulted that year's economic survey for every year. So if the exam is in 2022, one should go through the economic survey for that year. And the most important part for this examination was newspaper. 6 to 8 months before the examination, one must read the newspaper every day. And what I did in addition to reading the newspaper was that I jot down everything that I wanted to go through later. For example, if there is an international news and if there is an ICC ruling, so I noted down ICC on a page. I kept on doing for a week, and on Sunday I sat before the computer and I googled every time. I used to Google every time. So that's how I used to dig down and try to know about every topic that was in news. So that is about preliminary examination preparation. Now that is preparation. For attempting the paper, my strategy was to attempt as much as I can. Now there is 1 mark for the right answer and 1/3 for a negative answer. So I left a question only when I was not sure about excluding any of the options. Even if I was sure about excluding one option, I gave it a try. Because even if it was a zero-sum game, even if it was completely random, what I would get would be zero. So that is 1/3 into 3 minus 1. Now this is about preliminary examination. After the preliminary examination, there is mains examination. For mains examination, engineering graduates and science graduates are only eligible for mains for Indian Forest Service examination. So also the optionals, the number of optionals for Indian Forest Services is limited. There are 2 optionals that one can opt for. The optional subjects usually are agriculture engineering, civil, mechanical, chemical engineering, forestry, geology, and science optionals. For all these optional, there are some combinations which one cannot opt for. For example, two engineering optionals cannot be opted. Similarly, agriculture with agriculture engineering, forestry, and animal husbandry and veterinary science cannot be opted. Now, these optional, the main examination consists of 1400 marks. 300 marks for the English paper. Now, in the English paper, out of 300 marks, there is 100 marks for essay, and that is very crucial. One has to practice and be very careful with writing essay. So that usually determines the marks in the English paper. Afterwards, there is a paper on general knowledge that is of 300 marks. Now, UPSC specifies that it does not need any specific study, and it is also right that it does not need any specific study, just the preliminary examination and somewhat more extensive study would do it. Afterwards, there are two optional papers. There are 400 marks for each optional papers. Each optional paper has two parts. The part A, part 1, and part B, part 2. And for each part, there are two sections, section A and B. Usually there are 8 questions for one optional paper, out of which 5 has to be attempted. And from each section, at least 2 has to be attempted. There are 2 compulsory questions. So one cannot leave out any topic for the optional subjects, thinking that only 5 out of 8 has to be attempted. Now, for mains optional, usually what I would suggest the candidates, the aspirants, is that choose an optional which matches with your under subjects during the undergraduate days. For the your graduation subject should match with one of your optionals. My optional was physics, and my background is engineering physics. So at least I had some comfort level in one of the optionals. So that also saves your time. That also there is not much requirement of guidance from a coaching if one has studied the same subject during the graduation days. The other optional can be chosen based on the interest, also the availability of books, and the extent of the syllabus. So one can combine the two options. So this is the mains examination. Afterwards, there is the interview stage. That is the third and the final stage. Now, there is one more stage for Indian Forest Service examination. After one clears the 3 stages, there is physical test, that is walking test. And one has to do it in 4 hours, 25 kilometers of walking in 4 hours. That is also important. So it is very crucial to maintain the fitness level along with the preparation.